Hello, I'm Nora and I'm a 35-year-old woman. Today I want to tell you about an experience I had that left me feeling shocked and angry. But before I get into the story, let me tell you about how I came to own my own home. When I was in my early 20s, right after I graduated college, my parents got into a horrific car crash. My mom passed away on impact while my dad was rushed to hospital where he was alive for about a month. Somewhere in that month, my dad gained consciousness and asked for a lawyer. He wrote up his will, and in the will, he stated that I would get the house as soon as I got married. I didn't debate anything. I was too distraught to care about what I would get in case my dad left me. I just wanted him alive. I hadn't ever imagined my parents leaving me this young. I remember that when my dad gained consciousness, I was so happy. I thought he would definitely live. But shortly after writing his will, he suffered a cardiac arrest and was gone. I was inconsolable. Relatives from all over flew in to attend the funeral and offer me support. My parents had left me a good amount of money, and that, along with the money I was earning from my job, allowed me to rent a pretty cozy apartment. I wasn't really crazy about the idea of marriage, and I didn't think that I wanted my parents' house that bad yet. I didn't want to live in constant memory of their absence, so I didn't pursue a relationship for a very long time. I think it was in my late 20s that I happened to meet my husband, Sal. Sal and I lived in the same apartment complex. He had just moved in and I happened to run into him in the lobby. He was struggling to carry his bags and I helped him out. We got to talking after that, and talking eventually turned into going on dates. Living in the same complex made staying over at each other's place even easier. Since we were both older and knew what we were looking for, I guess we just knew that we were forever. About a year into dating, Sal asked me to marry him. Since we were already engaged, I realized I hadn't met Sal's parents at all. I knew that I would have loved to take Sal to meet my parents if I had the chance to, so I asked him about it. Sal was more than ready to introduce me to his parents. Although he did warn me that his parents were very traditional and conservative, I didn't mind. I just wanted to be fully involved in Sal's life. The day I met Sal's parents, I actually understood what Sal meant when he described his parents. His mother was silent and never made eye contact with anyone, while his dad literally commanded the room. Whatever his father wanted, his mother ran to give it to him. I found it odd, but I just figured whatever worked for them. Then Sal's dad, Jeff, asked what arrangement we planned to pursue after marriage. "So, how do you guys plan on working after marriage?" "What do you mean?" "As in, will you keep working or will you become a housewife?" We were discussing me becoming a stay-at-home wife because Sal makes way more than I do." "Good. That's how it should be. Women shouldn't even be allowed to work. Their role is to be at home and make sure everything is perfect for their hard-working husbands." "Dad!" "Excuse me? But I think that's a very outdated view. Women are allowed to do whatever we want because we have proven over and over again how competent we are. So gender shouldn't have to be a factor that determines our worth." "Say what you want. Women belong in the kitchen and that's it. I'm sure Sal will put you in your place eventually." I chose not to say anything because I didn't want to cause any drama right before Sal and I got married. But I was wildly uncomfortable. I didn't participate much in conversation after that. I felt bad for Sal's mother. Poor thing was worked to the bone, and I don't think she ever received a word of thanks in her entire life. Sal saw how uncomfortable I was and made an excuse to leave immediately. He told his dad that we had to move into our new place the next day, so we had to get as much sleep as we could. I awkwardly bid goodbye to them and was relieved when we were out of their presence. Of course, Sal was apologetic for his dad's behavior, but honestly, I was just glad that Sal was nothing like him. Sal told me that he watched his mother suffer and promised himself that he would never treat his wife that way. The next time I saw Sal's parents was at our wedding. I made as little contact with them as possible, although I heard from some guests later that Sal's dad had a lot of problems with the dress I was wearing because it was too revealing and not very wifely. Again, I didn't want to ruin family relations that early into the relationship, so I didn't say anything, nor did I let Sal say anything. The next 2 years were amazing. I got to create a lot more happy memories in the house I grew up in. It felt like I was at peace with everything that happened, and I was accepting my reality a lot better. And then one night, Jeff called us to tell us that Sal's mother had passed away suddenly in her sleep. He didn't want an autopsy done, so we just went over for the funeral. Sal was inconsolable, but I was there with him throughout. At the wake, Jeff asked us if we would be willing to let him stay with us for a month because he wasn't ready to go back to an empty house. Sal and I excused ourselves to talk over it. Okay, if I'm being completely honest, I don't know if it's a smart idea to let my dad into our house for so long. Sal, your mom died and your dad is struggling. A month isn't that long. I know, it's just, you know how he is. I don't want him to say or do something that will hurt you. You're my first priority. Oh, I doubt he'll do anything like that. Please, my mom probably passed away because she was tired of living with him. I know you're grieving, but that's a really rude thing to say. Maybe your dad will learn how lucky he had been with your mom and he'll change. I don't know. It's just a month, okay? It'll be over before you know it. Fine, but I'll be at work most of the time. So if he does or says something hurtful, I give you full permission to do or say whatever you want, okay? Got it. Letting Jeff move in was more than a big mistake. The evil stepmother from Cinderella had nothing on Jeff. He was demanding and controlling. He would have me clean everything twice a day. If I didn't do it, I would have to hear him yell and grumble all day long. Sal and I usually trade off cooking during the week. We alternate it, mostly because we both have very different tastes in food, and we like to introduce each other to new tastes. Well, Jeff didn't like that. He demanded that I make the food because I was the wife and I lived under Sal's roof. I don't think he knew that the house was mine, but I wasn't about to break the news to him when he was already going through a tough time. I had a feeling that it would break him. If Sal made the food, he would not eat. If he wasn't grieving the loss of his wife, I would never have accommodated him. Sometimes I would even surprise me while I did the work he forced me to do. During those times, he would compare me to his wife and how his son deserved someone as submissive as her. One time I made the mistake of rolling my eyes at him while he recounted a story about how his wife had made food for him as soon as she had come home from giving birth to Sal. Needless to say, Jeff lashed out at me really hard. Sal told me over and over again to talk back. Whenever Jeff did or say anything while Sal was around, Sal would immediately put his dad back in his place. Jeff didn't like that. He thought I had brainwashed his son into believing that he had to do womanly chores. Speaking of womanly chores, I remember how appalled he was when he saw me assembling this bookshelf I bought from scratch. He yelled at me for emasculating his son. The only reason I didn't say anything was because I knew that Jeff needed a place to stay and needed to grieve the loss of his wife. I just thought that this was his way of processing her loss. Plus, Jeff was family and I didn't want to abandon him like that. Eventually, his 1 month at our place was up. As soon as Jeff left, Sal and I sighed a huge breath of relief. Bet you're glad he's gone, huh? I have to admit I am. Although, what? Your dad didn't seem to know that this house was under my name. He didn't? No, that's why he kept making me do things. I thought it was because you were a woman. Oh, yeah, that was part of it too, but he would keep bringing up how I was living under your roof. Well, if he ever stays over again, which I hope doesn't happen for a very long time, you have my full permission to tell him that this house is yours. Are you sure? I feel like that will kind of make him really angry. Who cares? He doesn't care about how you feel. Give him a taste of his own medicine. We'll see. If he does anything that upsets or angers me, I'll do it then. Sal and I enjoyed a blissful year free of Jeff. Sal would call Jeff every once in a while to check up on him, but that was about it. Of course, Jeff would try to ask Sal if I was doing my wifely duties, but Sal would cut him off by making up some excuse about being busy and hanging up the phone. I think that was the reason for Jeff to do what he did next. He must have thought I wasn't doing my work or something and decided to take matters into his own hands. One night, Jeff wasn't feeling too good, so he drove himself to the hospital. Jeff had struggled for years with joint pain but refused to see a doctor about it. Anyway, that night, his pain was too much for him to bear and he went to the doctor. He was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. He was prescribed this treatment and was asked to be with someone to help him out. So Jeff reached out to Sal and told him to house him for the next few months until the treatment was done. Let me be a little clear. Jeff didn't ask Sal if he could stay with us. No, he told Sal that he had to house him. Sal was peeved about it, but I convinced him to let his dad stay with us. Sal wasn't very enthusiastic about it, but I reminded him that his dad was struggling, so it was the least he could do. By the next week, we were once again housing Jeff. He arrived at our place in the morning and he barely looked my way. I was the one that opened the door for him and he just walked right by. I tried to pick his bags up, but he just growled, yes, growled at me and asked Sal to pick his bags up. We were annoyed, but this was going to be our life for the next few months, so we had to put up with it. Well, unsurprisingly, Jeff went right back up to his routine from a year ago. He demanded I clean everything and yelled at me for not preparing the house for his arrival. He had Sal take him to the hospital to get his treatment and demanded that the house be cleaned and food be made by the time he came back. Sal was not taking any of his crap, so after they left, Sal texted me and told me to go out and enjoy myself. He told me that we'd order takeout and his dad would just deal with it. I was happy. I didn't mind. I thought, what would Jeff even do if I didn't do what he asked? Yell? Ha! Like I haven't heard enough. Well, I was kind of wrong. I checked in on some of my friends and asked if any of them were free to grab some lunch. A couple were, so I went out and enjoyed my time. When I got home, Sal and Jeff were back. Sal greeted me with a hug and a kiss. He asked me how my day was and happily listened to me. Jeff, on the other hand, looked furious, but surprisingly, he said nothing. I had to admit I did find that very suspicious, but I let it go because I was happy to not have to listen to him yell at me. That night, when Sal and I were getting ready for bed, Sal confessed to me that he had had a word with his father. I have to say I'm surprised that Jeff didn't say anything about me not doing his work today. Oh, yeah, I spoke to him about it. What did you say? I just told him to watch his mouth or he'd get thrown out of the house. Sal, that's so rude. That's what he said too, but I also told him to be grateful that we're housing him and that it wouldn't kill him to be nicer to you. I can't believe that he actually listened to you. I know, right? Even I couldn't believe it. Well, if this lasts, we'll be able to live in peace. Oh yeah, I hope it does. I had naively thought Jeff had seen the error in his ways. I was actually really happy about it. I was hoping that Jeff and I would be able to build a better relationship now, but that obviously wasn't about to happen. The next morning, Sal and I headed out to do a little grocery shopping. When we returned, we were greeted by Jeff, surrounded by my suitcases. Jeff, why do you have my suitcases? How did you even get them? Oh, they were under your bed and I just packed them for you. Excuse me? Son, I've been trying to tell you this for the longest time. You deserve someone better than this lazy woman who's just bumming off of you. She's not bumming off of me. What makes you think she's doing that? Oh, please. She never does any work around the house. She chooses to do all the masculine work instead of cooking you dinner. You have to eat food from out or cook it yourself to not starve. That's not how a good wife works. But I do cook and clean. I just don't do it as frequently as you'd like me to. Besides, Sal isn't a baby. Cooking food every once in a while isn't going to kill him. Son, do you see how she talks to your father? This is why I want you out of my son's house. What makes you think this is your son's house? Of course it is. He's the one that's working his butt off while you sit at home and look pretty. Oh, I agree he works hard, but he does not own this house. I do. Ha! You're lying. You'll really do anything to throw my son under the bus. I'm not lying. Ask Sal yourself. Son, she's not lying. She's had this house before we were even in a relationship. What? Oh, I'm so sorry, Nora. Save it, Jeff. Anyway, we waited those 2 weeks so that the effects of the treatments would kick in. Jeff barely experienced any pain and was actually looking a lot better. So one day, when he approached me to apologize, I finally spoke to him. Nora, please, just hear me out. I'm giving you 2 minutes. Thank you. I just wanted to apologize for the way I behaved. I didn't know that this house was under my name. And if it wasn't, you would never have apologized and you would have actually tried to kick me out of the house, right? Nora, please, I made a mistake. No, Jeff, I made a mistake. I made a mistake of letting you in my home again after the last time and thinking that you would have changed. So I've made a decision. Please don't kick me out. I won't kick you out under one condition. Is this really how you treat family? You set conditions for them to live with you? I don't think you get to lecture me about how to treat family, Jeff. My only condition is that you have to be the one that cleans up the common areas, so that's the kitchen, the dining room, and the living room. For every day that you don't, you have to pay me a day's worth of rent. That's outrageous! You can't expect me to do all that when I'm suffering. If your wife could do it right after giving birth, so can you. You either do it or you get out. Where's my son? I'm sure he'll be against this. Oh, no, he's fully on board with this, so good luck. I left Jeff standing there and didn't interact with him again for a while. From what Sal told me, Jeff tried to talk to him about it, but Sal just told him that it was my house and my rules. Ha! It was Jeff's ideology thrown right back at him. Anyways, Jeff reached out to various other family members to complain about how we were abusing him. A lot of them reached out to us and called us a lot of names, but we stood our ground and told them the full story. We also told them that if they truly felt that passionate about Jeff, they could be the ones to look after him. Some of them apologized and gave Jeff a good lashing out for yelling, while others just left me on read. Either way, I was left with peace again. Jeff tried to stick to the plan, but couldn't because of how tiring it was. I asked him if he understood just what he was expecting of me. He scowled at me and told me that since I'm a woman, my body was made to handle these kinds of work. I didn't want to deal with him any longer, and so I told him to pack his bags and get out of my house. Jeff said he gladly would, and the next day he was out of our hair again. He had gone to stay with a friend of his until his treatment was done. He called Sal a couple of days later to tell him that he would not get his house as part of his inheritance. Sal told Jeff to keep his house because he had a better one with me, and ended the call with that. I did feel bad that I had ruined Sal's relationship with his dad, but Sal assured me that his dad was the one who ruined it and not me. Now, Sal and I live a comfortable and happier life. I don't have to deal with any yelling or nagging. Last I heard of Jeff, he got kicked out of his friend's house too for being a nuisance. I think he stayed with some other family after. I hope he'll be better for his sake, really. Anyways, I guess I just wanted to tell you this story because sometimes you have to put your foot down regardless of who might get hurt. Sometimes it's family that treats you the worst. And you need to set a healthy boundary so you don't get used or humiliated. Always stand up for yourself and those that love you. Thank you for listening.